Welcome to another edition of the Magic Latest Podcast, where we discuss everything Orlando Magic basketball. I'm your host, Jalon Dixon, and today we are going to be talking about everything Summer League when it comes to the Orlando Magic making their debut in the loss against the Sacramento Kings yesterday. And we will close off the podcast with an interesting trade proposal to get a top 10 rim defender in Nicholas Claxton from the Brooklyn Nets. Could that be the missing piece that rounds out this starting five and really makes the Orlando Magic the team to be in the Eastern Conference? We will get into all of that and more in just a second. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe for daily Orlando Magic content. And with that being the case, let's start today's episode. Today, of course, we have to start with the actual game itself. The Orlando Magic fall to the Sacramento Kings in the first Summer League game of their Summer League season, 81-84. But in the game, Tristan da Silva, second-year player from Colorado State, shines in a real way, shoots 8 of 15 from the floor, finishes with 19 points, a team high, also has 5 assists, 7 rebounds, and knocked down 2 3-point attempts. And I want to point out something that was really important. I noticed something going into the game, or at least I read a couple of things going into the game in relation to Tristan da Silva specifically, a player that I did mention a few episodes back was a player to watch coming into Summer League. And there was something that was set as an agenda for him going into Summer League. I'm going to read that out right now. We just want him to be aggressive, Magic Summer League coach Amir Bahar said. He is very versatile on both ends of the floor. The main thing we keep telling him is to be aggressive and continue to attack. Going further on, Tristan da Silva actually speaks on his personal goals going into Summer League, and he says, being more vocal, taking a step up from what I've done so far. That's offensively and especially defensively. I feel like that's the area I have to grow. I'm excited, and I think it will be a good time. For me personally, I look at what Tristan da Silva was able to do in game one, and you talk about being aggressive. Led the team with 16 shots. Next closest behind was 10 shot attempts. Not 16, 15 shots. Took 6 threes, also tied for the most on the team. And a guy who is just hyperactive. Very active on both sides of the floor. Got a block in there as well. Was a -7, but also played the most minutes of any player for the Orlando Magic. Positioned himself overall as a guy that just got to do a lot of different things. Aggressiveness for Tristan da Silva, I think, is very important. When you talk about that 3-and-D wing position, what he's supposed to be able to bring to the table as a multifaceted player, he's somebody that does need to be able to create opportunities for himself, be more offensively sound, and be somebody that you can trust in certain situations to score off the bench as a team, as a part of a Orlando Magic team that still, if you look at what they bring to the table, has a well-rounded roster, but does not have a definitive scoring option off the bench just yet. I think it's a reason why the Anthony Simons trade possibility we brought up yesterday is still so intriguing. It's because of the fact that the Orlando Magic, despite having a more well-rounded three-point shooting backcourt and a denser backcourt variety, when you throw in Anthony Black and Jalen Suggs being more defensive specialist types, while you have Desmond Bane and Tyus Jones, who bring more of an offensive variety to what they have in the backcourt, they still do not necessarily have a go-to offensive generator outside of Paulo Banchero, Desmond Bane, and Franz Wagner, and more particularly for bench units, which means you're going to have to force a staggered unit, which this is not the most uncommon thing, but you're going to have to force staggered units where you have some semblance of Paulo Banchero, Desmond Bane, and or Franz Wagner on the floor for the entire 48 minutes so that you still have a consistent shot creator on the floor. Tristan da Silva developing into that player. Jace Richardson, who I mentioned last episode, needing to be that type of player as an on-ball creator to get real minutes on the floor as a part of a backcourt that is already super deep. That's where that comes in. On-ball shot creation is still the biggest thing that the Orlando Magic are missing, and the ability to create is going to be the thing that gets a guy like Tristan da Silva on the floor. Now, he showed glimpses of other things, like being a much more sound defender as a guy who I thought did really well on ball in certain possessions in this game. You have to be proud of what Tristan da Silva was able to do despite the loss, and I think that when you look at what the Orlando Magic are trying to build, the most important thing from this summer league, at least from the players that we're keeping an eye on, is their ability to create offense, either easy opportunities or self-generation. Those two things are going to be so important because that is still an asset that the Orlando Magic, I'm not going to say are deprived of, because again, they can stagger minutes of having some semblance of Desmond Bane, Franz Wagner, and or Paulo Banchero on the floor. That's very feasible. Again, it's a very common thing to do. The Los Angeles Lakers have staggered LeBron James and Luka Doncic in ways where there's always one of the two on the floor in order to be able to create consistent offense next to or without Austin Reeves, right? There's been certain iterations where we saw Luka Doncic with Kyrie Irving, where Kyrie Irving would run second units and it would look completely different because unlike playing next to Luka where things would slow down, Kyrie Irving would bring a more open floor run and gun style that would create more transition opportunities and the team would play faster. But he also would maintain the second unit in a way that created an offense in a different way, right? So those are two very high-level instances, but signs of consistency that throughout this league, that's a common practice to try to keep one of your all-star caliber players on the floor if you have multiple, which a lot of teams in this league now have at least two, staggering them in some kind of way so that you have consistent high-level play. Tristan da Silva, I think, has a chance to maybe not necessarily have a breakout year, but I think games like this one, where he does show more aggressiveness as an on-ball shot generator, are going to be signs that he's going to take steps forward to potentially make more strides next season. This is a guy that got a lot of his big minutes in the beginning of the season when this team was devastated by injuries. As soon as things got closer to a postseason push and everybody got healthy, he slowly but surely fell out of rotation and wasn't getting any more than anywhere between 5 to 11 minutes a game. And it showed because of the fact that he wasn't able to bring offense to a team that desperately needed a scoring punch. So I think for a opening game for Tristan da Silva, especially as a second-year player, had a very, very solid performance. Let's move on to our rookies, starting with Jace Richardson, who finished with 14 points. We set an objective for him. If you guys remember, I was talking about two things in particular, one that you could weigh and one that you couldn't. The first one was obviously shot generation. I wanted him to be a guy that sought out his shot at a high level. He finished the game with 8 shot attempts, shot 5 of 8. Very solid, 62%. Got to give him that. Got to the free throw line once, which is good. And he did end up having 1 assist and 1 rebound as well. Also should be noted, only had 1 turnover. Only had 1 turnover in 22 minutes. Very, very solid for him as well as the starting point guard for this team coming into this game against the Sacramento Kings. More particularly, the secondary goal was the three-point shooting. Jace Richardson attempted 3 three-point shots and hit 2 of them. Now, I said that I would like to see a high volume of anywhere between 4 to 5 attempts. I'm not going to dock him significantly by him taking 1 less three-point attempt than what I set the minimum bar for. But I do want to see Jace Richardson getting those 3 balls up at a higher clip. In this case, he was the 4th on his own team in terms of three-point attempts, with the highest, of course, being Tristan da Silva, tied at 6. The next being 5. 2 players having 6 attempts, 1 having 5, and then Jace Richardson with 3. Jace Richardson, especially with the skill set that he brings to the table, specifically when you think about what the Orlando Magic draft him for, you want to be seeing Jace Richardson in the 4, 5, and 6 three-point attempt range while he has this free reign to really show his offensive skills. Excuse me. So with that being the case, I want to see this tick up. I want to see this go up, and I want to see him progress. Now, again, I liked what I saw as an on-ball creator. A lot of opportunity, and I do like that he still was able to knock down the 3 ball at a decent clip for what attempts he did make. Jace Richardson finishing with 14 points, you'll take it. At the end of the day, you want this to be a guy that you can pull off the bench and say, go get us 10 to 12 points in a 7-minute stretch, right, while Paulo Banchero and Franz Wagner step off the court and you're playing next to Jalen Suggs or Desmond Bane, right? You want to be able to let him free reign off that where he can make an easy 9 points in 3 minutes off of a handful of three-point attempts and then another 2 to 3 points off of getting to the line or getting to his spots in the half-court setting. That's what you want to see from Jace Richardson if your expectation is to see him play with the big ball club this season. So far, so good. I do want to see that three-point attempt go up, but I'm not going to dox him for the very first game, especially given the fact that this team was sharing the sugar pretty decently and a handful of other players were getting the three-point attempts up, which is very good for this Orlando Magic team because you want to see a handful of guys. You want to see this where you have multiple guys. They finished the game where they had, I believe it was 29 three-point attempts. You want to see the Orlando Magic finishing games where they're in the 30, 35 plus three-point attempts per game. You don't want to see them change their style significantly, which is why I think 30 is a very solid sweet spot where if you have at least 3 guys taking 6 attempts per game, you're already at 18. Then a couple of them just come within the flow of the game themselves for a handful of other players, and you can easily net yourself at anywhere between 27 and 33 points a game, which I think three-point attempts per game, which I think is a very valid place for a team like this to be, given the fact that even with them improving their three-point shooting, a lot of it still is primarily coming from the backcourt improvement more so than anything. Of course, like I said, if Jalon gets up 6 to 8, if Tyus gets up 4 to 5, if Desmond Bane is getting up 8 to 9, right? Paulo Banchero is up around 5 attempts. Franz Wagner is up around 4 to 5 attempts, right? Now we're slowly but surely creeping around 20 to 22, and that's just your main core 5 guys. Not really including the fact that Wendell Carter Jr. can spread the floor. Jace Richardson can get minutes. Anthony Black may attempt 1 or 2, maybe 3. You see what I'm saying? So Orlando should be pushing to be shooting anywhere between 30 to 35 three-point attempts per game and trying to hit anywhere between 36 and 37%. Really 35 to 36% as a team. That would be a significant jump given the fact that they just shot 30% as a team last season. If they can get to the league average of 35 to 36% as a team, I think it will significantly change the win totals for this Orlando Magic squad going into next season, and they were already really, really dangerous. Let's move on to our other rookie, Noah Penda, who showed off the Swiss Army knife ability, and we mentioned that his goals coming into this game, obviously, Ben Simmons on-ball shot creation, shot 4 of 9 from the field, and finished with 8 points. I said that I wanted him to have 2 stocks. He didn't have any blocks, but he did have 2 steals. He also had 4 assists and 3 rebounds. Only turned the ball over 2 times. Missed all 3 of his three-point attempts. We knew that was going to be a question mark going into the season. We knew this was going to be a question mark. I'm glad to see him attempting them, though. Taking 3 three-point attempts for a player that we already know is a low-usage player when it comes to shot generation beyond the arc is very good because the idea is that we have to see him slowly but surely grow the confidence to become at least a average shooter. Even a relatively above average shooter would be kind of like the baseline, but we're going to say an average shooter, again, 34 to 35% could be a game changer for what he brings to the table. But again, the ability to finish in transition, had a monster dunk early in the game as well. But again, 4 assists, 3 rebounds, 8 points. Like, you want him to be this guy that's able to just create offense in the flow of the game. I think Noah Penda is going to be a guy that ends up thriving in the fast break opportunities. I think in situations where they're in transition, Noah Penda is going to be an absolute freight train. We've seen it. If you see the highlights of him from overseas, Noah Penda is a guy that when he gets a full head of steam, especially if he has the ball in his hands with a full head of steam, you don't want to be in front of him. You don't want to be around that circle because you're either going to get put on the poster or you are going to get a whole lot of knee in the chest trying to draw a charge foul. So Noah Penda, to me, I don't have a ton to say about him because in this case, he kind of did exactly what I expected of him. I do think that he has a chance to be a high-level rebounder. Again, coming out of this game with 3 rebounds, I think is relatively decent. The 2 steals is big. This could be a dude who kind of, if anything, is an Obi Toppin-like player, moves very well without the ball, can thrive in transition, a guy who can just make connecting passes and be a really good guy. I think Obi Toppin's transition game for what he's become in Indiana, more particularly, where he's grown into more than just simply a play finisher. He is still a high-level dunker. Don't get me wrong. He's not a guy that's like shooting the three, like shooting the three at high volume or taking guys off the dribble. I think Noah Penda has a little bit more ability there. But I think in terms of what he can do to average a quick 8 points a game of, 2 or 3 fast break attempts, a backdoor cut, and a half court slash to the basket, finish right hand hook, right? Boom, 8 points right there. And it's all off of just showing you his high IQ, being in the right spots, playing in space, and being able to operate at a high level in transition where you just know that he can be a high-level play finisher above the rim because he is not necessarily an above average athlete, but he is a guy that is still a relatively high-level athlete when it comes to finishing around the rim. So I think Noah Penda has a real chance to see some minutes on the floor this season, just again as a play finisher type and a guy who can be a real connector for the Orlando Magic. I want to see him continue to explore the studio space as a guy in the half court because I think that him in the transition game is already relatively established as a guy who I think is going to be dangerous in the open floor, and more particularly a guy that I think could be not only a good play finisher but also a good surveyor in terms of being able to run a fast break and get other guys involved because you have to be so cognizant of who he is as a play finisher, but he has a high level enough IQ to be able to understand when to spray out the shooters on the fast break or to be able to dime up and put guys in really good position to finish the play if he's unable to. But again, saw a very strong poster from him the other day in transition that said, hey, bro, this guy is a very solid athlete. We're going to end on an interesting trade proposal. Shout out to the guys over at Sports Illustrated who discussed a potential a mock trade that would land Nicholas Claxton on the Orlando Magic. The actual trade is a 3-team trade that involves the Hawks and the Brooklyn Nets. The Hawks will get Goga Batazde. The Magic will receive Nicholas Claxton, a 2029 second-round pick via Cleveland from Atlanta. And the Nets would get Jonathan Isaac, 2026 second-rounder from Orlando, the 2028 second-rounder from Orlando, and a 2030 second-rounder from New Orleans from Orlando. And the logic behind it is the trade sees the Magic sending out more than they are getting back, but it's not an unruly deal for Claxton. The 6'11" Brooklyn Nets center is only 26 and one of the league's best rim protectors. Last season, Claxton was top 10 in blocks per game at 1.4. He also flirted with a double-double, averaging 10.3 points and 7.4 rebounds. For the Hawks, they lose a big man in Clint Capella in free agency, and despite grabbing Kristaps Porzingis, the Hawks can benefit from a capable rim protector like Goga Batazde. Last season, Batazde recorded career high averages in points, being 7.2, and blocks at 1.4 in an elevated role. The Nets have been one of the East below average teams for years, so dismantling the current core in favor of picks might be a good option. Unless he's flipped to a contender, Isaac can serve as a good 3-and-D reserve presence. So let's start from bottom to top. For the Brooklyn Nets, the collection of second-round picks, I think for them would be solid. We just saw this team grab 5 first-rounders, though. I don't necessarily know how many more future picks they want to grab unless the goal is to consolidate these guys and sell them off, or not necessarily consolidate the guys, but consolidate these picks and move off of them. And you're able to get very solid role players for a litany of second-round picks. We saw once upon a time PJ Tucker be traded for 5 second-round picks. We saw Jay Crowder get traded for, I believe, 4 to 5 second-round picks once upon a time when he was traded to Milwaukee, I believe. Unironically, I think both of those teams might have been for Milwaukee, or maybe PJ Tucker was a different team. Nonetheless, we've seen high-level role players be traded for a litany of second-round picks in the past. Honestly, I think that, being able to get Jonathan Isaac in the deal is probably the biggest thing for the Nets, in my personal opinion, because I think they can potentially net a future first-round pick off of him, or again, he's a guy that can be a solid 3-and-D style big man for you. So that would be that. For the Hawks, I think that's a little bit interesting because I do think they need a backup big, or at least another solidified one. behind Kristaps Porzingis, Goga Batazde is an interesting pick for that. Also, given the fact that you might have to pay him, is another thing that kind of strikes a little bit of interest because I don't necessarily know if the Atlanta Hawks are looking to give significant money to the center position, given the fact that they do still have Onyeka Okongwu on the roster, and you, of course, did acquire Kristaps Porzingis. You also have Jalon Johnson, who can play small ball five in spurts as a guy who is like 6'9", 6'10". So I don't necessarily know if they need Batazde. You could say the same thing about the Orlando Magic, though, of course. And the Orlando Magic, at least from a defensive perspective, if you're talking about rim protection, gets similar productivity from Claxton as they do from Batazde if we're talking simply about rim protection in terms of blocking stats. They both averaged 1.4 blocks last season. So, not to disrespect this article for what it says, but if you're trying to get elite level rim protection, according to the stat of simply saying, oh, he averaged a double double, and in that time frame, he was top 10 in blocks at 1.4. Well, so was Goga Batazde, just in more limited minutes. Is this a guy that with more minutes could average 1.7 blocks per game, 2 blocks per game, right? A similar thing could be said for Nicholas Claxton, who, of course, has been banged up over the last couple of seasons as well, and plays for a very horrific Brooklyn Nets team that's still trying to figure out their identity, and I think finally starting to step into that, coming off of, obviously, their trade of Cam Johnson and the looming negotiations around the extension of Cam Thomas. So they are in the middle of trying to figure out what the heck they want to do. So Nick Claxton is kind of getting caught in the crossfire of all of that. I do think Nicholas Claxton would be a significant upgrade over Goga Batazde, right? I do also think that giving up significant draft capital and Jonathan Isaac and Goga Batazde in the same trade simply to get a guy for rim protection on par with, honestly, if you give me Jonathan Isaac and Goga Batazde, I like the depth and defensive versatility of that over simply having only Nicholas Claxton. Like, if it makes any sense. Like, I think that Jonathan Isaac in 18 minutes a game can give you Nicholas Claxton level productivity defensively. I think that Goga Batazde in 18 to 24 minutes a game can give you Nicholas Claxton level productivity. Again, he averaged 7.2 points last season. Nicholas Claxton averaged 10.3. So I think that this is a trade that, although grabbing a guy like Nicholas Claxton could be a really interesting situation, I do think that it could be a talent upgrade if you're simply just going at name value. Yes, of course. But I think if you're talking about what's actually worth it, you're giving up multiple second-round picks. Jonathan Isaac, who is very solid in an 18-minute per game stretch, maybe 20 minutes per game stretch. And Goga Batazde, who next to Mo Wagner, who obviously is still in the team as well after being re-signed for $5 million. I believe it's 1 year, $5 million. But showed real edge as a two-way productive center last season. Like, he's a guy that I feel like with more minutes could be just as productive as Nicholas Claxton. And then you pair Jonathan Isaac, who gives you legitimate defensive quality. And then you pair the fact that you're giving up, let's double check that again. 3 second-round picks in this trade. 4 second-round picks, excuse me. That's a lot to go after Nicholas Claxton. But you guys let me know in the comment section down below. Do you guys think it's worth trading for Nick Claxton, given the state of the roster being already one of those interesting spots where I would say that we have a significant amount of depth at every position? Or is the talent upgrade itself just the juice is simply worth the squeeze, right? Like, Nicholas Claxton as a talent is just simply much more worth it than holding on to a injury-prone Jonathan Isaac and a Goga Batazde who are going to have to pay next offseason or have to let him walk, which, I mean, likely we would have to let him walk given the financial situation of the Orlando Magic, right? So You guys let me know in the comment section down below. Basically, is Nicholas Claxton the juice worth the squeeze, or should we hold on to our guys at the big man spot? With that being said, this is the end of another Magic Latest podcast episode. Again, like I said at the beginning, remember to like, comment, and subscribe for more Orlando Magic content, and I will catch you guys next week. Peace.